welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your hosts, Buddy Sotello Esquire and Evan Ginzburg. And this week, we have the most special guest of all. It is Evan Ginzburg. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, buddy.
It's mainly my fault. I'm going away camping this weekend, so we couldn't get a guest this week. But you know what? It kind of brings us back to the original show where it was just you and I, you know, interacting back and forth. And we've had a lot of really great guests on the show, and I want to thank you already, you know, Evan, for all the people that you've brought on over the months. You know, I've enjoyed every single one of the conversations that we've had, and I've learned a lot about, you know, wrestling, more than I've ever known before about the business, thanks to what we've done. But this week, I really want to interview you. We both have, I think, things to say about some of the things that have happened in the last week and so forth. So I think it's going to be more of a free-form discussion between you and I, and for you to get some things off your chest that have been bothering you, but I totally agree with. So why don't you go ahead and say what's on your mind right now?
Well, first off, let me reference your camping trip. As a kid from Brooklyn who grew up in the 60s and 70s, I saw Deliverance, The Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't leave the city for anything. So good luck. Good luck. I'm worried about cannibal hillbillies and mutants and
last time I went camping, they did have a bear show up.
Yeah.
I
can live without bears.
There is that, but I don't know. I'm, you know, call me Mr. Natural or whatever. I mean, I do like getting away from everything, and this is my friend's family campground, so it's not like a public campground, so it is kind of nice, and it won't be very crowded, which is good because I want to get away without, you know, getting infected. That's, you know, a big deal these days.
And it's good for the bear when he eats your head because there won't be witnesses.
Well, maybe I'll throw my kids first and run away, get in the car and run away like in every good horror film. But no, we'll be fine. Well, the camping will be a good way for me to get away. But anyway, let's get a couple things. First of all, let's talk about the passing of Kamala, because I think that, you know, will feed into a lot of what you also want to say about what's been on your mind. So your thoughts on Kamala and just let's look at his body of work first before we analyze, you know, his ultimate fate. And I always was a big fan of Kamala, you know.
I thought Kamala was great, and he was certainly a big star. I saw him headlining in WWF. I saw him headlining in Pro Wrestling USA. I saw him wrestle Sergeant Slaughter in the main event on a Pro Wrestling USA show at the Meadowlands. So wherever he went, the guy was a headliner. And I thought it was a great gimmick. And I know some people find it, you know, offensive, a stereotype. But you have to remember, this is a different era. When I grew up, you had Waldo von Erich and Baron von Raschke doing Nazi gimmicks. I mean, you know, there were all kinds of offensive stereotypes. And, you know, these guys made a living with their gimmick. People were not as, you know, hypersensitive as they are today. And I don't think you could do a Baron von Raschke promo shot with a Nazi flag, which he did back in the day. You know, it was a different time, and, you know, a lot of the cancel culture, and believe me,
the Love Brothers also go to the ring with Nazi memorabilia.
I don't think so. You're thinking of somebody else.
Oh, okay. There was like a in the 70s, at least out here in the Shire promotion, they had a couple guys who were they were bikers. And
the Love Brothers did a hippie gimmick. They didn't do a Nazi gimmick.
Okay. Well, they were like bikers, and they wore like Nazi, swastikas on, and this was like in the '70s. That maybe they were just local guys that never got big. I don't remember their names.
Well, I don't know, to be honest, but the Nazi gimmicks, you have to understand that in the 70s, it wasn't that long after World War II. World War II ended in 1945, and in the 70s, you're talking 25, 30 years later, so they still got enormous heat with that gimmick, and also the Russian gimmick, because it wasn't that far removed from the Cold War. So why was every Russian, quote unquote, evil? Because it harkened back to the Cold War. My grandfather was from Russia, and he was a hardworking, honest guy. So
Well, and you were close friends to Nikolai Volkov.
well, Nikolai Volkov was really from Yugoslavia, so when he was asked to do the gimmick, he wasn't crazy about it. But they were like, "You're going to make money with this gimmick. It's going to be hot," and they were right. So my point being, I heard that what's her name from CNN or MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, had something negative to say about Kamala. I didn't hear it, so I can't quote it. But you can't judge a 30, 40, 50-year-old gimmick by today's, cancel culture, hypersensitive, standards. And I'm somebody on the left saying this. I lean left, believe me. But true liberals are anti-censorship, and especially, that song from 1935 is offensive. That movie from 1942. It's like, aren't there enough problems today without, working oneself up over minutia?
Is there a way in today's society that we can laugh at things that were meant to be parodies of these sort of things? I mean, nobody maybe the very gullible, but most people didn't take seriously that Kamala was really, from the deepest, darkest jungles of Uganda. Did anyone really think that, Hillbilly Jim was truly like, a backwaters guy from, Pennsylvania or, Kusawachi, Alabama,
Hillbilly Jim is actually a very sharp and very successful businessman. So, they were all playing characters. And look, you could go back to every black wrestler in WWE. Why did he have to come into the ring, dancing and, hard head, which is the oldest stereotype in history? I mean, there were stereotypes going back forever. So the selective indignation that this stereotype is worse than that stereotype, either they were all wrong, or, it's just the lowest level of show.
But can we still laugh at a movie like Blazing Saddles and like the over the top racism and the kind of the craziness of a character like Kamala or so forth? Can we appreciate something like that without applying today's standards to it? If you do that, is that something that's now considered wrong, and is that wrong for considering it wrong?
Look, I think people are hypersensitive today. There's been Jewish stereotypes in wrestling where the manager is, cheap and money hungry, and there's been every stereotype under the sun. I mean, you're judging something.
Look, I'm Buddy Sotello. I'm living an Italian stereotype character, which I'm not actually Italian. Spoiler alert for everybody that's, but everyone that didn't think that I was a Jew from San Francisco thought I was an Italian from New York. I'm serious about that. Maybe it's the hand gestures.
For those who don't know, tell them a little about your character.
Buddy Sotello is I created it under those same circumstances. Is the fact that people have always thought that I was an Italian from New York for whatever reason. My parents are both from New York, and they met each other out here in San Francisco, but they didn't meet in New York. But I've always had a really New Yorkish like thing about me, and so a lot of people have said, did you live in New York? Have you been from? I'm also a big sports fan, which is much more symptomatic of being out from the East Coast than West Coast. Everyone's supposed to be so laissez-faire about their sports teams. But meanwhile, I started to work for APW as their attorney, doing their contracts and their legal work, and they wanted to work me in as a manager. And I've always wanted to be like this kind of like, I've loved Andy Kaufman. I always loved the Wizard. I like the Grand Wizard a lot. For one of the main reasons is that he never got beat up. That's one thing that he was smart to know, like, to be able to interfere. He didn't really interfere that much in matches. When you go look at him, he just stood around, and enticed the crowd and worked the crowd. But Andy Kaufman took it to a different level. He actually, got, in there and got pounded around and did some amazing stuff. I just was always a gigantic fan of Andy Kaufman, and I always will be. So the Buddy Sotello character, I looked at all the things that people hated about lawyers, all the things that people hated about New York. Sorry about that, but that's the way California is. And I figured the one thing that people could hate more about an attorney is like if I made him from New York, and if I made him like a mobster kind of like a character that you again stereotype of what California. So I actually visited New York pre 9/11. I was there in like 1999, and I got myself a Yankees tie. Because back then the Yankees were winning the World Series. I know it seems like that was a while ago, but that's when the Yankees had this juggernaut of a team. And so I would just talk about how I had George Steinbrenner as a client, and then I said I had Leona Helmsley as a client, and I said I had this upstart developer, Donald Trump, as a client, as one of my legal clients. And I carried around a Palm Pilot, and I would like go and talk into the Palm Pilot and type people's information in there, which at that time was a big high-tech piece of equipment. So, the name Buddy Sotello actually, though, comes from people have always said, if you're going to be a porn star or someone that's going to go, do something, you need a fake name. You take the first pet that you've ever had, and you combine it with the first street that you remember living on.
Yes.
And Buddy was a bird that I had that was a beloved pet of mine, so that became Buddy. And Sotello Avenue is where I grew up in San Francisco. And so I said, well, that sounds nice in Italian. And that is how I created that character. But that character, Buddy Sotello, is all the things that I've worked with attorneys in my life that I hate about them. Every attorney that I've ever met that I couldn't stand is poured into the Buddy Sotello character. And that allows me to really make it something that everybody hates, and I hate it too. I hate the Buddy Sotello character too. So the more people hate it, the prouder I am that I created this entity that people can't stand and really love to hate. I'm like, well, I love to hate Buddy. If I went out to the ring and it was Russell Jackman and everyone was booing me, I'd be crushed.
Yes. Yeah.
But because it's Buddy Sotello and people cannot stand him, to have 500 people chanting "Buddy sucks, Buddy sucks, Buddy sucks" is an amazing feeling. It is the the crescendo. It's the rock and roll. The if you were a musician, it's that guitar solo that everyone goes crazy over, or you're doing the drum solo and you're smashing every drum that you have around you. You're doing a Neil Peart, just type thing. That's for a manager. What you get is when you've created this entity that people can't stand, you can't stand either, but you love to see people who can't stand him. And that fuels the energy that's inside of me to be able to be even more over the top and delivered even greater interaction between me and the crowd, or me and when I get on the mic, or when I'm doing commentary. A lot of times I did a lot of commentary with JJ, not McGuire, but my friend JJ Purdom, and he would play the Gorilla Monsoon, sort of just like straight guy, and always be for the fans, and I was the Bobby Heenan, slimy, always go for the bad guys, give excuses for the bad guys kind of commentator. And it was really great back and forth between the two of us. So that's kind of how the whole, but Buddy Sotello is based on a stereotype too. So I'm no better than Kamala or Nikolai Volkov or Ivan Koloff, who's from Canada, and so forth. I'm no different than any of those other people, but there's a reason why sometimes making something that isn't you into something that you bring to the ring gives you an advantage than just being yourself, Russell Jackman, and wandering out to the ring. So what do you have to say about that?
I've done heel managing on the East Coast with Team Splendid, and yeah, basically you take an aspect of your personality, times it by 10, and turn it into a character. So yeah, I get it, but I just think we're in a day and age where in 2000 you can't judge a 1985 gimmick by 2020 mores, and people are just too sensitive. So besides the fact that Kamala did not end up well, he did not end. It wasn't like he sold out and exploited whatever. The poor guy, he was a double amputee. He died. They had to collect money for his funeral, for his burial. I mean, this is a guy who sold out arenas around the world. So let me just get a few things off my chest. Both sides of this. I think on one side, nearly 500 fans were generous and beautiful and gracious enough to put money into the till to help this man, to help his family, to get him a proper burial. Nearly 500 people. Most wrestling fans are not rich. Most wrestling fans don't have money to burn. So when they dig into their pocket, they feel it. And when you look at the actual, fundraiser, you see a lot of $5 and $10. So that's what people could afford, and it's from the heart. And it's actually quite moving. But then the other side of it, the ugly side of it. Okay, I knew Kamala. He was the sweetest guy in the world. He was actually a musician on top of everything. If you know Southern Soul, like Malaco Records, Lattimore, that kind of music, he was actually a very solid R&B singer, songwriter, instrumentalist, and a talented guy. But he was a warm, friendly, just good-hearted. I liked him. I'm not going to exaggerate. I wasn't as close with him as Nikolai or Johnny Valiant, but I knew him. I honestly think Dr. Mike Lano said to us that our old radio show was the first time he was ever out of character and being interviewed. Because back back in the day, these guys stayed in character. So to have Kamala interviewed on our show and, talk about his music and everything, it meant something back then. So anyway, so I point out that Kamala said to me face to face, and he had no reason to lie. He said, Evan, I made $800 in a sold-out 15,000-seat arena versus Hulk Hogan. $800. Okay, now, this is a 15,000-seat arena. I'm a music guy. Did Paul McCartney or Elton John or Rod Stewart or the Stones or whoever played that arena, do you think they made $800 headlining that arena? Okay? So, to me, it's exploitative. But the fanboys, and I'm tempted to go into Michael Rappaport mode. The fanboys started with, well, $800 for 10 minutes isn't bad. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's put this like very simplistic idiot mode. Okay, this isn't Star Trek. He wasn't beamed in from the Enterprise. The man drove hundreds of miles or woke up at the crack of dawn to get on a plane, whatever the case may be. Got to the arena at 5 o'clock. Waited until the main event at 10 or 11 o'clock. Put on his makeup. Got ready. Performed. After the show, showered, took off his makeup, got back on the road. This was not 10 minutes. Break it down. Okay, then it's like $800. I wish I could make $800 in one night. What about the road expenses? What about the gas, the tolls, the meals, the hotel, whatever else? Sending money back home to your family, the taxes. Okay, everybody's suddenly a mathematician. He made $800 selling out an arena. And then you have the fanboys with the, oh, it wasn't him that was the draw, it was Hogan. Well, it takes two to tango. If Hogan was wrestling, an unknown, if Hogan was wrestling, some undercard guy, no, it would not have sold out 15,000 seats. It's ridiculous. It takes two to tango. Roddy Piper helped make Hulk Hogan. Okay? As huge as Hogan was, as huge as he was, it still takes two to tango. Okay? Besides the fact that the myth, quote, all these guys pissed away, quote, fortunes on wine, women, and song is utter bullshit. Utter bullshit. Many did. Some did. Don't say they all did. It's absolutely untrue. Here's when the word all applies. We're all going to die one day. Other than that, you use the word all, you're wrong. You're just plain wrong. Okay? This man deserved better. He deserved better. His wife had to leave her job to care for him for 10 years. 10 or so years. Okay? These guys are on the road. On the road. Greg Valentine told me 320 days. Bret Hart said 336 days. Kamala was right in that mix. Main event guy during that period. So let's say he was on the road 300 days. Whatever it was. These guys are not employees. They're independent contractors. No health benefits, no pensions, no 401ks. What do you have to do to be an employee besides work for somebody for 300 or so days? How disgraceful. Utterly disgraceful.
I agree 100%. Everything you said is an incredible tragedy, and I think we're in a very weird time of our existence where there are so many people that feel that basically this sort of thing is justified, and it's not just in wrestling, but you can see like how the non-unionization of wrestlers leads them to be treated in ways that we would never tolerate the NFL, we would never tolerate the NBA, we would never tolerate Major League Baseball or hockey in having, this kind of a structure. What if the NFL was treating their players this way? And that you said that, an NFL player, well, hey, an NFL player only plays about 5-6 minutes of actual, in-game play. They say that it's between maybe 6 to 12 minutes of actual physical game time. Why not only pay an NFL player $800?
The point is, you have guys who, after they watch 5,000 shoot interviews, they think they understand the business. They think they understand the business. I know wrestlers who main evented Madison Square Garden in the 70s, early 80s, never broke $100,000, sending money home to their families. They ended up pushing a broom when they retired. Pushing a broom, okay? I know wrestlers that lost houses, okay? They all pissed it away on wine, women, and song. Fortunes. Absolute crap. Absolute crap. Some did, many didn't.
Yeah, a lot of them had medical issues that, because of what they did in the ring, cost them, tens of thousands of dollars in surgeries and medicines and doctors, visits and higher insurance if they could even get it, based on their injuries. That's where I know that for a lot, unfortunately, Kamala had to spend so much of his money and dealing with the fact that he was a double amputee because of his condition, and that Vince McMahon could, reach into his pocket and probably in loose change that's in his wallet, pay for all the expenses that Kamala's family has incurred for their funeral stuff. And if you say, well, if Vince does that for everybody, he won't be a billionaire. Well, guess what? Fine. You know what? That's the cost of doing business. You know what? Being a human being is also the cost of doing business. And Vince McMahon is not a human being. He is a businessman. He is a guy that truly believes, like Trump, I don't care if people get pissed off if they hear this, but a guy that this is how America thinks that it's okay to run your business or run your country, is to just really look at a bottom line and say that the people are worth only as much as I'm willing to pay them. And once that's done, the rest is for me. And this never-ending feeling that money is an ends and not a means to an end is what is killing us as a society.
Well, let me just say one thing. When I was a kid, and you're going back decades, the income discrepancy between a boss and a regular worker was 5 to 1, 6 to 1. A guy like my dad would make $25,000, and the boss would make 100, 125, 150 grand. Now, these guys are making, God knows how much money, thousands of times more than the worker, and the whole mentality has changed over time. And look, I've seen online wrestling, it's not even fans, obsessives who have said that WWE is my religion. Vince is my hero. So no matter what you say, they're going to look for 27 reasons to negate, what you are saying, because they don't want to see the dark side of it all. This man was a double amputee. They had to collect money to bury him. This is not a happy story. And for people to be critical of him, he pissed away a fortune. Now, these guys didn't make fortunes back in the day. They didn't make fortunes back in the day. I'm sorry. I don't care what delusions you have. These guys had endless expenses. I'll tell you an interesting story that I just learned a few weeks ago. Haystacks Calhoun, who was, a big guy like Kamala, even bigger, he had to pay for 2 plane tickets every time he was on a plane just to fit in the seat. He would pull up the middle thing and sit in 2 seats. So imagine what his road expenses were. Okay, so he was like, I never got rich in wrestling, and he was a main event guy. He was like a Dusty Rhodes type who went everywhere back in the day. He was like pre-Andre, like a draw who went everywhere. But he didn't make the money you would think, he had made. And it's these guys with the shoot interviews. I know every minute detail of this business. No, you think you understand this business. Plenty of people have lost houses. Plenty of people have lost wives. Plenty of people have lost their health. Plenty of people have lost their lives. Okay, how about an off season for these guys? They're not farm animals. How about an off season? Okay, again, I don't want to paint a totally negative picture. 500 or so fans dug into their pocket to help this man. That's a beautiful thing. That's a really touching, moving, beautiful thing. But for those who were critical of him, or for those who were critical of guys who said, how come, the promoters didn't do more for this man? And they're angry at people calling out the promoters. Okay? I mean, that's misdirected anger. Okay? Yeah. You're using his death to attack WWE. You're attacking my religion. No. There's a long line of guys, miles long, who did not end well. Did not end well.
And yet Vince McMahon is just rolling around in profit. I mean, he's just, his ratings are down, but he's still, personally able to make millions and millions of dollars. I mean, if you took like even a fraction of the pay raise that his kids got, recently, and gave that to a guy like Kamala's family to deal with the funeral expenses, that would take care of everything. There's just, it's this whole idea that Vince and his family don't have enough. Like if Vince and his family never earned another dollar for the rest of their existence, they would still have more money than anyone that we would ever know times 100, times 1,000.
They future endeavored dozens of young wrestlers during the pandemic. During the pandemic, where there's few places to go, okay? But, the kids have those multi-million-dollar salaries. They don't have to worry. I'm sure they have benefits. And when you bring that up, oh, it's just business. That's business. And they'll rationalize nepotism. Oh, I would take care of my kids if I owned the business. I mean, you can't win with the fanboys. You can't win.
Yeah, and but the fanboys are one thing, but then there's the rest of the world. I mean, the fanboys don't make up the entire world, and the rest of the world does see this sort of thing, and I think it has something to do with the continued unpopularity of the WWE, and that's increased. People are having, I think, a harder and harder time separating Vince from the product like that he used to be able to do. I think that people really see Vince McMahon, even though, yes, he isn't involved in the storylines. Yes, Vince McMahon isn't, responsible for the everyday goings on of the business, but he's still the face of the business. He's still the quote unquote heart of the business. It is, while he's still alive. I mean, Vince wouldn't have it any other way, right? I mean, he can't completely like just fade into the background and just become, just a figurehead on Mount Rushmore. He wants to like still be, if Vince had his way, he would headline the next WrestleMania and win the WWE title. If somehow he thought fans would somehow buy that, he would run that angle. He and Shane would become tag team champions or something like that.
Let me just say the other side, because unlike the innumerable podcasters who worship WWE, I don't want to paint the totally negative picture either. They've helped innumerable charities. They've given back to various, well-deserved, cases and kids in need and Make-A-Wish. No, I don't want to paint them as evil incarnate either. But at the same time, it seems like the wrestlers themselves are at the bottom of the priority list. Take care of these guys. They sacrifice their bodies for you. And the human body, the wrestlers themselves refer to a bump card. You only have so many bumps on your bump card, okay? The body gives out after a while. You see these guys later on, they're in wheelchairs. They need a hip replacement. Their joints are shot. It's like you can't just push people beyond human endurance.
And what's worse that you don't see is the pills and the addiction to painkillers that these guys are on. And that, what you also don't see, and this is what I believe was a major cause in losing Crash Holly, when Crash Holly died of a drug overdose, is that what you don't see is that the fame that gets taken away from these guys, it's not something that all of them can handle so easily. When you just say to somebody, your dream of being on TV and all that stuff is over. There's no kind of like counseling that the WWE does or like any kind of like job placement or anything like that, or we help adjust you so that you can get a job doing something in the WWE back office or, at the warehouse or something like that. They just tell people you're gone, pack your stuff up and go to wrestling.
And the thing is, guys like Johnny Valiant, who, headlined arenas everywhere for them, he said to me he was let go and no reason. It's like, did I do something wrong? Was I, decades later, he was still, he had no idea. How about giving somebody the courtesy of, listen, this is why it's not working out. We wish you all the best, instead of just unceremoniously being dropped. And again, some of these guys have lost houses. Some of these guys have relocated, to do this, and suddenly there's no income. I mean, it's a pretty cruel business. And again, there are other promoters who were ruthless and didn't pay well. And, I don't want to, dump it all on WWE, but they're the number one. They're number one. So, when you talk about wrestling, it's just naturally going to gravitate towards them.
Well, we have a few more minutes. I also, know that it was the birthday recently of your friend Nicole Bass, and I wanted to, for you to have a few moments to talk about her passing and see your thoughts on missing her, at this time.
Nicole was the sweetest, kindest, most fun person. She was like a walking parade. I mean, just a wonderful person. And also, the business did not do good by her. And so she was hurting in the end. And um, I was there at her deathbed the night before they pulled the plug. It was brutal, brutal. And because she was a gym rat and she was always in incredible shape. And, to see her connected with all the plugs and wires, it was just horrible. Again, a lot of these people do not end up well. And let me just get this one other thing off my chest before this show winds down. For the scumbags who have thousands of dollars for all kinds of gimmicks and merchandise and tickets and publicly post that all of these GoFundMes and Kickstarters, etc., for ailing wrestlers are scams. Go fuck yourself, okay? Really, really. I was on a 50,000 watt radio station for 16 years. We were not allowed to curse. We would be fined. 30 years of radio and TV. I almost never, ever, even Buddy will tell you, every week you don't hear, really, to put out publicly, not to contribute to ailing wrestlers, absolutely reprehensible. Guy's a $6,500 belt, won't throw $5 in the till for a wrestler down in his luck who sacrificed his body to entertain you, who was never paid what he or she should have been paid. Really, reprehensible, reprehensible.
I totally agree. I don't know why these people are motivated to even say those kind of things. I mean, it truly means that you've never met or known anyone who's ever done wrestling, who's ever tried to be a performer, who's ever tried to, dedicate their lives to entertaining people and not made it. I mean, everyone thinks that, everybody that does wrestling anywhere has made millions of dollars doing it. And they just don't get that 95% of them have to do something else other than wrestling to make it in this business. I mean, my friend Sir Samurai, I mean, people think that he's like, he's wrestled all over the place. He's right now out of a job because the restaurant he worked with closed because of COVID-19. So he's completely out of a job and literally, scraping by, and just dealing with $600 a week in unemployment that, that Trump wants to reduce down to $200 a week.
They stopped that already. He's not even getting that.
Yeah, no, he's not even getting that. And then, they want to now make it $200 a week if they restored it all, and just this whole concept that just people can't suffer enough so that people who have so much can continue to have so much is just, it really rubs me the wrong way overall in society. It's not just wrestling, but wrestling really embodies it so much, where you have this king, this mighty king with all the money, treating everybody else like they're serfs, like they are basically, I mean, they're not slaves to him, but they are in a way because of the fact that they just don't. You say, well, you can go to Impact, you can go to AEW, you can go to Japan. But that's still a really limited number of jobs, and a place like AEW isn't making enough money. I mean, the NWA doesn't even do any shows anymore. So you really have, almost a monopoly there by Vince McMahon, especially when it comes to the, biggest names and the biggest payouts. It's you have Vince using that, the fact that wrestlers have never been able to unionize, the fact that wrestlers have never been able to have the kind of representation that we've seen in the other sports is, I think, a major reason why Vince is able to wield the kind of crazy power that he does. Plus, he's a majorly manipulative guy when it comes to the politics of it. He's able to change the laws of this country to get what he needs done for his entertainment empire. And that's something we haven't seen with anybody else anywhere in history.
People may not know what you're referring to.
Changing the laws of Florida so that the wrestlers are deemed as essential employees. Having wrestling changed from sports to sports entertainment in New Jersey so that he didn't have to pay taxes and be regulated like a sports entity would. The whole change of saying that these guys are really actors, but they're also independent contractors, is just a giant scam, kind of like the way that you have Uber and you have Lyft saying these people are not employees. Well, recently in California, they just said that Uber and Lyft are truly employers of these people. And so that those things have got to change. So if Uber and Lyft are the employers of their drivers, why is not Vince McMahon truly the employer of the wrestlers, and that they should be considered truly employees that are that deserve 401ks and benefits and all that? And don't say, and you're not, but I'm saying, out there, fanboys don't say that Vince can't afford it, because he can.
Let me just make one or two other quick points. The wrong assumption that these guys are all making crazy money just because they're on TV is ridiculous. I mean, there are school teachers in New York making more than a lot of wrestlers. There are wrestlers on primetime popular TV shows making 80 grand, and you may think that's a lot of money if you're making 20 or 30 or 40 grand, but this may last all of 1 or 2 or 3 years before they're let go, and that's it.
And I know that there are provisional contracts that are around 45.
Sure.
That, guys will work for 45 a year, and live in a one-room apartment somewhere, in Poughkeepsie or way out in the middle of nowhere, and just, because they're on the road so much, they pretty much, just live in a hotel their whole time.
The other thing that a lot of people don't grasp is I've had wrestlers say to me, Evan, I'm always in pain. Always. Okay? So what does that lead to? That leads to addictions. That leads to early death. Again, how about an off season? It's a brutal business. And sure, the top stars are making good money today, and they'll point out, well, why does so-and-so need health insurance when he's making $900,000? Because 99% of the guys aren't making hardly anything. It's like the people on top are doing great, just like in the music business, and everybody else is hustling. It is what it is, but to have fans, apologists for a business that spits these people out, again, kudos to the people that sent Kamala out, with a nice funeral and some money left over for the family. It's just heartwarming that people would dig into their pockets, and many have little in their pockets. It's from the heart. But there's other fans. I wouldn't spit on them if they were on fire.
Yeah, I'm in some ways I'm really glad we kind of had this show to be open-ended enough for you to say these kind of things, because you're saying that play this show when you die kind of thing, and And I think that it's what you've been saying here is something that's really important that maybe gets pushed under the rug, or you have people making excuses for this kind of behavior from guys like Vince McMahon. It just hurts me to know that, a little gesture from Vince McMahon would would outdo all the $5 and $10 donations that Vince McMahon could contribute $50,000, and it would mean so little to him, and it would have no impact on his bottom line and his shareholders. That's the other terrible thing, is that this whole thing that, well, Vince owes it to the shareholders, and Vince owes it to the people that invested in his business to always be looking for profit, always be looking for the bottom line, and all that stuff. But aren't the shareholders human beings too? Don't they have even the slightest amount of consciousness, and not look at the people who are performing as if they're mere pieces of meat in a sandwich that they're about to eat? That there's real impacts on just saying that all we care about is the stock price. Whatever gets done needs to be done so that the stock is at its highest level. Otherwise, we don't care. That has its price.
There are portfolios, that have stocks that are with companies that do, positive things for the environment and such. You could get entire portfolios of stocks with companies that do the right thing. I mean, it does
Right.
it does exist. Not every, investor is ruthless either. There's good and bad, like any
Right,
other.
but this excuse that Vince can do what he wants to do to treat these workers terribly because that eventually makes the stock better, and he has a responsibility to the stockholders, not the wrestlers. That to me is another really short-sighted philosophy that is bound to destroy itself.
Well, you see these debates online. They want to raise the minimum wage to $15, and people are like, why should I pay somebody $15 to hand me a hamburger at a fast food joint? It's like, well, in New York, you can't even live on $15 an hour. How about, saying I want my neighbors to live a little better? I mean, so, you have people who are kind and, get it, and you have other people who, you mentioned the $600 unemployment. People are like, why should they get $600 a week to sit home? I'm getting $400 a week to work hard. How about some indignation for monster corporations hiding billions of dollars overseas, and paying zero taxes or whatever the case may be? There's no indignation for that. You're worried about the poor guy sweating over an oven at McDonald's. That's bothering you. Come on. Oh,
Amen. Amen.
I mean,
Yeah.
look, you're not going to talk people into being kind. You're not going to talk people into seeing things differently. What happens is somebody in their family falls on hard times. Somebody in their family gets sick, and they start to see the world differently. This isn't fair. This isn't working out. How come the rich are treated better than the working class, the poor, whatever the case may be? People start to see things differently when it affects them. And a lot of these wrestlers, a lot of these legends are my friends, okay? And I heard from them horror stories going back decades, various promoters. And, I know guys who went overseas and got stiffed on tours. Got stiffed on entire tours, working overseas. And you can't just go, oh, that's the business. Oh, that's the business. Sometimes things are just wrong. They're just wrong. And to be an apologist, a corporate apologist, I saw endless people the other day You know, Kamala pissed away his fortune of money. Fortune. It's laughable. Laughable. You know, and you
So
know,
we're not laughing.
it's pitiful when all is said and done that
Yeah.
you need to collect money to be buried. And it was the same for Jackie Wilson, the R&B singer who sold millions of records. And it's the same in other industries, but doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it right. Um, so I don't know what else to say because I end up, you know, putting this stuff out online and people attack you and you know, it's just I'm talking from the heart. I've seen a lot of guys not end up well. More so than the guys who do end up well. Nikolai ended up well. Nikolai bought a farm and, you know, invested his money well. And, okay, but he didn't make millions of dollars, you know. Nikolai was making about 400 grand at his peak. And again, road expenses and taxes and, you know, money goes. Money goes when you're on the road 300 plus days a year. People just they don't get it.
Well, I think today was a really very unique talk for us. I really appreciate. I mean, I love how we have guests. I love talking to guests, but today was something you said a lot of things that I think were really important and needed to be said, and I'm glad you had a chance to say it. Maybe it made you feel better. I hope it does a little bit, and I think this is going to go down as one of our most unique talks that we've had in the 22 talks that the 22 shows that we've done. So
I have a love-hate relationship with this business. I've met great people. I've been to places I never otherwise would have been. I've had experiences you couldn't imagine, whether it was helping to make The Wrestler as a associate producer, being at Lincoln Center for the New York Film Festival, 2,300 people sold out for The Wrestler, 350 days, which we're very proud of. I mean, wrestling's taken me around the world, and you know, some of the greatest people you ever want to meet. And again, some people, you wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. Just, highs and lows in this business. And for the fans who live and breathe with shoot interviews, staring at some guy's head for 2 hours. Try actually talking to some of these guys, and see what they've been through, and see how they've been ripped off, and see some of the humiliating and exploitative things that they've been through. Various promoters. I'm not singling anyone out. I mean, but again, wrap your head around this. I know guys who headline Madison Square Garden, never broke 100 grand, ended up pushing a broom. And I'm not being melodramatic. This has actually happened. I'm not going to name names. Okay? Wrap your head around that. The next time you do they all pissed away fortunes on wine, women, and song. Ridiculous.
all right, Evan. That's it for this week. That's a really great show for me. I really appreciated everything you had to say. And we'll be back next week with another fabulous guest. So until then, you have anything else you want to talk about or anything else you want to promote?
Yeah. Watch Wrestling Then and Now on Amazon Prime. Nikolai, Don Dr. Death Arnold, Kowalski, Tiger Khan. Again, a lot of guys who are no longer with us. So, it's a beautiful tribute to them, but it's also painful to see. And for me, anyway, for you, it'll be a nice nostalgic ride. And support 350 Days. Go on our Facebook page, follow us, and of course, wrestling and everything. We've done, what is this, episode 23? I lose track.
22, I think.
22. Okay. Well, we've had some great guests. Check out the archives. Spread the word. And this show is from the heart. We're not going to be reviewing Raw and SmackDown with great gravitas, nor AEW, which I actually like. This isn't what we do here. So if you want something different from the heart, not cookie cutter, enjoy the show.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. All right. Bye.
Bye.